As the troops approached Fort A, Trooper Rutten's mount began behaving erratically the moment it detected the presence of native warriors. The animal refused to obey commands, forcing Rutten to constantly ride in circles around the 3 cavalry companies. This agitated circling continued beyond Fort A, and when they neared the skirmish line, the horse suddenly bolted forward, carrying Rutten dangerously close to the enemy positions. He managed to swing the animal around to the right, threading back through the wooded area to rejoin his unit. Contrary to claims made by William E. Morris, Rutten sustained no injuries during this maneuver. His shoulder wound came the following day during fighting on the hill. According to Rutten's recollection, Sergeant O'Hara became the first casualty, falling at the skirmish line. Shortly after, the entire command withdrew into the timber and began preparing to mount their horses. Rutten overheard First Sergeant Ryan questioning Captain French about their next move and what direction French believed they should take. While French appeared to be contemplating his response, Major Reno rode past toward the timber's edge and shouted for everyone to follow him. Trooper Lawrence took a hit while still inside the wooded area, while Trooper String was struck just outside the timber's perimeter. As Rutten left the timber, a solid line of Indians, as many as 200 he would think, rode up on his right and had stopped or nearly stopped, and were doing some very loud yelling as the soldiers were getting out of the timber. While a few warriors fired at the retreating cavalrymen, most seemed focused on vocal intimidation, producing various celebratory shouts and calls. They appeared nearly as agitated as the soldiers themselves, seemingly uncertain about what tactical movement the cavalry was attempting. Rutten quickly left these hostile observers behind, though he soon discovered more warriors positioned ahead with substantial numbers riding parallel on the right flank. Not far from the timber, he passed the location where Isaiah Dorman's horse had been shot from under him. The black interpreter had taken a defensive position on one knee, calmly firing his personal sporting rifle at the advancing warriors. Rutten and Isaiah knew each other well from their time with the 7th Cavalry. As Rutten rode past, the scout glanced up and called out a final farewell to him. Corporal Scollin went down in marshy ground near the timber. Further ahead, Lieutenant McIntosh was attempting to escape, but making poor progress. He rode alone, isolated from the command, struggling to urge his mount forward. A trailing lariat seemed to be interfering with the horse's movement. Between 20 and 30 warriors had encircled McIntosh, riding around him in a deliberate pattern, clearly intent on bringing him down. At this point, Rutten's horse detected the native presence even more strongly than before, and required no guidance through reins or spurs. Rutten's only task was maintaining his seat in the saddle. The animal charged directly through the circle of warriors surrounding McIntosh and continued forward. Disliking the sight of warriors on the right, the horse veered left into an area scattered with stumps and fallen timber. These obstacles presented no difficulty for the panicked animal. Rather than navigating around them, the horse simply leapt over each obstruction, maintaining a straight trajectory. Upon reaching the Little Bighorn River, Rutten found the water crowded with struggling horses and riders fighting to cross. Deciding to avoid the chaotic mass, he directed his mount downstream. The far bank rose steeply, and cavalrymen were riding in both directions along the near shore, searching desperately for a crossing point with gentler access. Eventually, the mass of horsemen converged on a narrow buffalo trail that cut through the steep embankment at a manageable angle. Before Rutten arrived, an exhausted or wounded horse had collapsed directly in this passage, blocking the route completely. Somehow the animal was removed with remarkable speed. Rutten neither witnessed how this was accomplished nor paused to investigate. Climbing through that cut tested every horse's remaining strength. Describing the fighting on the hill during the morning of June 26th, Rutten recalled Captain Benteen approaching to report his rapidly mounting casualties. Benteen stated calmly that without reinforcements soon, he couldn't maintain his position. He added matter-of-factly that if the warriors overran his hill, the remaining 6 companies wouldn't survive much longer. Benteen and Reno discussed the situation, with Reno eventually agreeing that Benteen could take one of the companies from the lower position. Without debating which unit he would receive, Benteen simply stated he would take French's company. When Captain French received this information, he immediately moved along his defensive line, instructing his men to remain quiet but prepare themselves. At his signal, they were to jump up and sprint toward Benteen's position. Since Benteen's line occupied the highest ground in the area, the reinforcing troops would be completely exposed during the roughly 100-yard uphill dash. When French gave the command, all the men present, though not every available soldier from the company, leapt up, spread out, and charged up the slope. During this movement, Trooper Wilbur was wounded. Rutten later heard the story involving Peter Thompson and also learned about the soldier named Nathan Short, who allegedly reached the Rosebud. According to Rutten, Botzer served as acting first sergeant of Company G, a fact confirmed by Rafter. Alex Brown was with the pack train. Color Sergeant Vickery carried one flag, the regimental standard for Custer's battalion. Sergeant Robert Hughes of Company K carried the second flag for Custer. The 7th Cavalry had two flags, the battle standard and the regimental colors. Hughes likely carried the battle flag. Rutten identified Francis T. Hughes of Company L as the final trooper from the 5 companies descending Sundance Creek. Hughes rode a large black horse that proved impossible to control. Unable to keep the animal within the company formation, Hughes was forced to trail behind the others.